Hello, my name is Carina Rodrigues da Silva, and I'm a master's student from the Federal University of San Francisco Valley, Univas. My advisor is Professor Alexandre Silva, and I would like to thank the 2020 Global One Health Conference for the opportunity. I'm happy to present the study entitled Suicide Among Veterinarians in Brazil, Preliminary Data, by the authorship of Carina Silva, Ana Amélia Gomes, Thaís Santos Doni, Rafael Vieira, and Alexandre Silva. Every 40 seconds, a person commits suicide, according to the World Health Organization. In veterinary medicine, the mental health is a topic of concern due to occupational stressors that can lead to mental health disorders such as anxiety, depression, compassion fatigue, and burnout syndrome. All the psychological disorders can evolve to a complexity of symptoms and even lead to suicide of these professionals. Evidence from previous surveys of veterinarians have suggested that they have a higher risk of suicide when compared with the general population. As we can see here in the figure 1, we reunited two recent studies that evaluated the veterinarian's mortality by suicide in the United States of America. In this graph, we compare how many times the suicide rate was higher in male and female veterinarians when compared to the general population. In both studies, we observed that males have a suicide rate 1.6 and 2.1 times higher than the general population, and female are 2.4 and 3.5 times at a higher risk of dying by suicide than the general population. In Brazil, there is lack of suicide mortality data, mainly involving veterinarians. This fact is related to misleading and losses on information about death causes collected by the Brazilian Mortality Information System, the SIM, the only source of data of mortality by suicide in this country. Given that, this study aimed to access through a data survey information on Brazilian veterinarians' suicide rates. To achieve this aim, the present descriptive study was conducted through a review of the national and statewide databases and was performed on the SIM database. Additionally, we reviewed published articles which were identified through a computerized search in the Google Scholar, PubMed, Medline, Cielo, and CAPES journals databases. The following general descriptors were used: suicide, veterinary suicide, and Brazil. The same descriptors in English were also searched with additional Portuguese and Spanish translations as keywords. Data on veterinary suicide was retrieved from the SIM database from 2006 to 2012. As results, we observed that the lack of the occupational variable in the SIM database showed that there is an important bias in the available data. Only one Brazilian state, that was Minas Gerais, uses the occupational variable in its system, as we can see here in figure 2. In this chart, we compare the availability of variables in the national and Minas Gerais state system for data collection about mortality. We observed that the state database have much more variables when including the occupational variable when compared to the national database, which can be an important bias of the national system, which implies in the underreporting of suicides by occupation in the country. In the scientific databases, we found only two studies. The first one analyzed the proportionate mortality data by suicide by occupation with veterinary suicide average rates from 2006 to 2009 were 2 times higher than the general population, as we can see here in figure 3. being even higher than the other professionals as police officers. In the other study that evaluated the cause of deaths among veterinarians and zootechnicists from 2006 to 2012, showed that female veterinarians had a relative frequency of death by suicide 3 times higher than males. As conclusions, we have that our preliminary data highlights that the National SIN database needs the immediate inclusion of the occupational variable on the system, aiming reliability, precision, and up-to-date data on suicide mortality. Given the high rates of veterinary suicide worldwide, there is an urgency that stakeholders create and implement suicide prevention strategies for veterinarians, especially in Brazil. All the authors are grateful to the Pernambuco State Science and Technology Support Foundation, the FACEP, for financial aid and support to carry out this research. This study is part of my master's degree at the Federal University of San Francisco Valley, and I was sponsored by a fellowship from the FACEP at the time of this study. Thank you for your time and your attention.